The movie opens with a half-conscious man leaping from a rooftop, narrowly escaping a police officer's attempt to save him. The scene then shifts to Jane, a medical student who lives with her delinquent younger sister June and cares for their ailing grandmother. Jane's intense study schedule, household responsibilities, and struggle to pay off debts led her to suffer from insomnia. At the university, Jane's professor Nisha gives her a business card from Weimar Personal, a German pharmaceutical company researching insomnia. They offer substantial payments to test subjects. Enticed by the money, Jane quickly applies. Soon after, she visits the company where the head scientist, Hans Miller, explains their experiment dubbed DEEP, which aims to harvest a brain chemical called crotonin, responsible for wakefulness.
Last question. How much money will I get?
The process involves implanting a microchip in the subject's nape. After being promised substantial rewards and signing an NDA, Jane undergoes the implantation and receives a watch to monitor her creatinine levels. Hans warns that if she falls asleep for more than 60 seconds before reaching 100% crotonin, the chip will induce cardiac arrest. Later, at home, Jane begins her night routine. Time seems to drag as she feels bored and sleepy at just 2 a.m., with her creatinine level at only 39%. Suddenly, she hears a car outside, and June arrives home late, getting a ride from a mysterious guy. Jane confronts her sister, and during their argument, she accidentally breaks June's phone, causing June to storm out in anger. Day 2 of Level 1 begins, and Jane encounters fellow students and deep subjects at the university. Partygoer Win, gamer nerd Peach, and popular influencer Sin. Peach has a crush on Sin. Despite their differences, the four quickly bond and add each other on social media. Win develops feelings for Jane. Upon completing Deep's first level, they each have their microchips removed and receive their rewards. Peach upgrades his game room, Win buys an expensive watch and an aquarium, Sin visits a cosmetician, and Jane pays off part of her debt. As they grow closer, Sin confides in the group about her stalker. They decide to name themselves Non Non, meaning no sleep in French and Thai. Motivated by the promise of an even bigger reward, they proceed to the second level of Deep, which requires staying awake for longer periods. Later that night, Jane is studying at home when June arrives late again. This time, Jane gives her a new phone bought with the money from Deep as an apology. Meanwhile, Win enters his messy house that's filled with books and barely speaks a word to his father. Sin also doesn't have a good relationship with her family, who are forcing her to be a medical student even though she prefers to study communication. In the morning, the students go to the facility and continue level 2. Dr. Hans explains that based on their previous performances, he expects their creatinine level to reach 100% in 5 days. The next thing we know, the 4 students are barely conscious. Peach's watch starts beeping as he falls asleep for a few seconds, while Win is half-consciously walking through a hallway and can't focus his vision. June gets suspicious about Jane's behavior and about the way she found money to buy her a new phone, so she demands answers. Jane lies and says she got a part-time job as a tutor, but June doesn't believe her. They get into a fight and Jane leaves, but her sister finds a business card from Deep on the desk. The next morning, Jane is barely awake and is doing an autopsy on a body during class. While cutting, she hallucinates that the person has her grandmother's face and screams in front of everyone. Meanwhile, Sin is hardly walking through the university's halls, and her perception is distorted. She also realizes that more students partake in the experiment. The 4 sleep-deprived students meet in the canteen, and their watches are stuck at a low percentage. Even though she's tired, Jane notices how Win's creatinine levels are higher than the rest. She concludes his percentage is higher because he exercises, and that body movement probably affects creatinine levels. To cope with this, they hold a party at Peach's house where they swim in the pool and drink sugary sodas. They drink cocktails and get drunk afterward. Sin, Win, and Peach start dancing, but Jane is sitting still because she is dizzy. All of them have an amazing time, and Jane even kisses Win, giving him a bit of false hope. At one point, Sin is horrified to discover that Peach is her stalker. His computer displays dozens of her Instagram videos simultaneously, and pictures of her hang from the ceiling above his bed. Sin collapses, but is resuscitated at the last second. Following Chin's near-death experience, the group finishes the second level and decides to quit the experiment.
But deep level 3 will bring you 1 million baht each.
Finally, they get their much-needed sleep and attempt to resume their normal lives. A few days later, Peach approaches Sin to apologize, explaining that he only stalked her because he liked her. Sin threatens to call security and ends their friendship. Subsequently, Jane also ends her relationship with Win, explaining that she is not looking for a relationship at the moment due to her overwhelming responsibilities. After being rejected by Jane, Win goes to a bar to drown his sorrows, but he can't stop thinking about her. He also discovers that his dad threw away his mother's old belongings, leading to a heated confrontation. His dad explains that he didn't want them to be stuck forever with her memory.
ถ้าผมมีโอกาสแบบพ่อตอนนั้นแม่ก็คงยังอยู่
Meanwhile, at the university, Jane sees an ambulance carrying the body of a recently deceased student and notices a deep watch on the student's wrist, filling her with fear. When she gets home, she finds another distressing scene. Her grandmother has collapsed from a stroke. Jane rushes her to the hospital, where June arrives, albeit late. Jane tells June they need to move their grandmother to a more affordable hospital. June then hands her a paper bag filled with money bearing Weimar's logo. Jane asks her sister to turn around and sees a chip in her neck. They argue, and June storms out while Jane goes with the nurse to check on their grandmother. Afterward, Jane rushes home but finds her sister missing. She heads to Weimar and discovers Dr. Hans implanting another chip into June. Jane threatens to call the police, but Hans reminds her that she signed an NDA. If she wants the chip removed from her sister, she must persuade her friends to continue with level 3.
Hurry, Jane, your sister's deep 3 treatment has started.
The sisters leave the hospital and meet up with Sin, Win, and Peach, hoping to get help from their friends. Peach and Sin don't like the idea and aren't willing to risk their lives again. Sin says it's a bad bet because they will be risking 4 lives to save one. Win reminds her that Jane was the one who saved her life and that she owes her for that. Even though Jane starts begging, Sin leaves and Peach follows her soon after. Win is the only one who wants to help and promises he won't leave the sisters behind. Later, the sisters are watching their grandmother in the hospital and open up to each other. June apologizes and says she wasn't thinking straight. Jane comforts her and both sisters hold hands, wondering how they will survive level 3. At the same time, Sin is at home doing a live feed when she starts remembering the good times she had with the other students. Peach is also going through old memories and starts crying, regretting how he acted with his crush. The next morning, Jane, June, and Win arrive at Weimar, but see how Peach is already waiting for them.
สวัสดีเพื่อน
He changed his mind and decided to help the sisters after all. Soon, Sin enters the facility too, saying how she doesn't want to be indebted to anyone. The 4 of them start level 3 together, but Jane has thought of a plan. After they get chipped, they go to Professor Nietzsche, who will help them during the experiment. She places them in her father's old abandoned ward and gives them Exerol to keep them awake. She tells them to use the intercom if they want more help, and soon leaves them on their own. A few days pass and everybody's doing fine, but on the 6th day, things quickly go astray. It all starts with Peach, who starts having auditory hallucinations and hears gunshots from the other ward. Win is also hallucinating, seeing his dead mother coming toward him in the hallway, while Jane imagines her sister bleeding. June starts comforting her sister, persuading her that she's alive, and one by one, the students start gaining awareness. In the bathroom, Sin stares at herself in the mirror as numerous pimples suddenly appear on her face. Enraged, she breaks the mirror and starts blaming Jane for her skin damage. Sin becomes hostile, insulting everyone. She calls Win desperate for Jane's attention and labels Peach a psychopath. Win reacts angrily to Sin's accusations, while Peach tries to de-escalate the situation. Frustrated, Win turns his anger towards Peach, and they start fighting with no one able to calm them down. Terrified, Jane uses the intercom to ask the professor for help, but there's no response. She leaves the room to search for Nisha and discovers a room where Nisha has been watching them via security cameras, tracking their progress. Jane also finds audition papers for an actor who looks exactly like Dr. Hans. Realizing that Nisha hired an actor to pretend to be a doctor while she was running the whole operation, Jane is shocked. Nisha catches Jane snooping, prompting Jane to flee back to her friends. As she slips on the stairs and falls, Nisha observes her from the top of the stairs, slowly approaching her victim. Jane manages to escape to the room where everybody's fighting, and starts calling the police, but there is no signal. Nisha then locks them in the ward and tells them she'll remove the chips once they reach 100%. Soon after, Chin breaks all the cameras and tells the doctor she's never getting her microchips because she's coming to kill her. Suddenly, Win falls asleep and his alarm starts beeping. Despite their efforts, Win doesn't wake up and instead dreams about his deceased mother. In the dream, she takes a gun and shoots herself. His watch hits 0 seconds, indicating he has slept over a minute. Everyone cries, unable to save him, and he dies. Nisha gets a notification of Win's death and enters the ward to take his body and remove the chip. However, as she does this, Win suddenly gets up and hits her on the head. The students had tricked her. They turned off the cameras on purpose so Win could take CCL, which induced temporary cardiac arrest.
อาจารย์ทำอะไรกับพวกหนูทำไมอะคะ
When Nisha recovers, Jane demands to know the reason behind her brutal experiment. Then the professor opens a curtain to reveal her old lover, Jed, who was in a coma. He is the same person from the beginning of the movie who jumped from the rooftop. Jed was a medical student who suffered severe hallucinations due to sleep deprivation experiments. Nisha, his girlfriend, has been trying to revive him with creatinine ever since. She explains to the students that she cares about them and never intended to harm them. Nisha has also been harvesting creatinine from her own body, showing her neck wounds to the students. Despite this, nobody believes her intentions are good, prompting Nisha to attack Jane and inject her with Valium, leaving her unconscious. June and Win try to save Jane while Peach and Sin struggle with the professor, who attempts to inject them as well. Win performs CPR on Jane, but she remains unconscious even after a minute passes. During the struggle, Sin hits the professor's head with a keyboard, saving Peach from being injected. Jane is still unresponsive, and June, crying over her sister's body, hits her heart with her fist. Suddenly, Jane wakes up and everyone is relieved. In the aftermath, Professor Nisha is arrested, and all the implanted chips are extracted from the subjects. Though they don't receive the money for level 3, they continue with their now improved lives. Wien reconciles with his father, Sin continues as an Instagram influencer but studies communication instead of medicine, Jane and Win start dating, and Peach quits gaming. The movie ends with the four of them reuniting as friends. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Watch our next videos on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you on the next one.